Hello, everyone, and welcome along to the Racing Breaks Royal Ascot preview. My name is Rishi. I'm joined by two fine jockeys. One, of course, has turned his hand to something slightly different. He's going to be part. You are part of the ITV team at Royal Ascot, aren't you, Ruby?
I am there for a couple of days, Rishi. Yeah, the first thing I
Lovely.
did notice was that yourself and our other guests, you're so organised. You didn't have to blur out your background, but unfortunately, my office is such a tip. I had to blur mine out. But hey, at least we can do these things on Zoom nowadays.
Well, at least you know how to do it. I mean, I wouldn't know how to do that, so I'm presuming you know how to do it, and one of your children hasn't had to help you, which would be the case in my house. We also have Kieran Shoemark. Kieran, welcome to the Royal Ascot preview. How have you been keeping?
Very well, thanks, Rishi. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to talking through the next 5 days at Ascot.
Yes, it's going to be great fun. And we are going to start. We might as well start with putting Kira on the spot because, of course, very early on, possibly the biggest ride of the meeting, I would imagine, for you would be on Inspiral. But is she definitely running in the Queen Anne? Might she run in the Prince of Wales's? What's going on right now? I know we're a few days away still.
Yeah, it's she's obviously got two entries. It's still very much in discussion and up in the air. I'm not, I've only obviously ridden her once. She's won, I think she's won six Group Ones. She's won four Group Ones in a straight line. She's two round the bend. I'm sure she'll stay the mile and quarter Ascot, but the mile and quarter Ascot is very different to a mile and quarter at Santa Anita, and especially being on weather watch, there's some unsettled weather around, and I suppose my only concern if she were to go to the Prince of Wales is, if it was soft down the back, which it could be, it could just test her stamina slightly. So yeah, she's in both, and a decision doesn't have to be made just yet.
Okay, we'll hold off on that for the moment. Ruby, Kieran mentions about the possibility of rain. It's very hard to ascertain and be adamant exactly what's coming. I've looked at so many different forecasts for what's coming up at Royal Ascot. It's very similar to what's been happening for the last few days, where they say it's going to rain, then we don't get that much, then we get too much, more than expected. I mean, how do you prepare for that?
You don't. But the only thing is, Richie, it'll be the same for everybody. So you can't really prepare for it. We are in June. Every dry day, with the forecast the way it is, you can't see Ascot watering. So it's going to be drying the whole time with the expectation of rain. Like, and forecasts are whatever you want to find. We all keep looking until we find the forecast that we want. So there's that many apps. Look, there's one app predicting 10 mils of rain before racing on Tuesday. And yeah, if that comes, it does change circumstances, but it's going to be the same for everybody, and there's not a whole lot anybody can do about it. So you could have a discussion about the weather here for 20 minutes, and none of us will be any the wiser when it's all over. So look, it is what it is. What we can discuss is what's in the race and the different scenarios that the weather could throw up. Obviously, if it rains, it brings big rocks into it. If he runs massively, we saw what he did on Champions Day. But the bigger worry for me for Inspiral, and I think a lot of it, and I don't know Kieran that well, but a lot of it seems to be falling back on Kieran, is the lot of lack of big race success for the Gosden team. At the moment, I think that's actually down to the form of the Gosden horses. He's three winners from 30 runners in the last fortnight. To me, they are not firing. And unfortunately, Kieran Shoemark is the very same as everybody else. You cannot carry the horses. They can only run as fast as the ones you're riding. And look, their time will come, but I'd be slightly worried about Inspiral just for the form that the yard is in right now. I prefer to see them booting in more winners to be absolutely confident about her in either race at Ascot.
Is that a fair call, Kieran?
Yeah, I think that's very fair. I think it's fair to say we lack a bit of depth going into Ascot this year, and in Spiral, I'm pretty confident in Spiral's come forward a long way since the lock-in. And like under no illusion she would have needed to. But I galloped her the other day on the July course. Three horses went up there, and yeah, I think she's back to where she back to somewhere very close to her best. She gave me a lovely feel that day. I agree. The horses haven't been firing, but I hope she's an exception. She gave me a proper feel the other day, and I'd be pretty confident going into Ascot, really.
Okay, so let's assume she does line up in the Queen Anne. You're confident about her chances. Ruby, you like Big Rock.
If it,
Obviously, if the
if the
ground,
rain comes, I think that's the big if. I don't think you need to be betting anti-post and not in this particular contest, but I think if the rain comes, yeah, I think Big Rock was even more disappointing than Inspiral was in the Lockinge. She was fourth, he was sixth, but I just think on testing ground, I watched him in Ascot last year in October time, and he was it was it was just extraordinary to watch what he did, and there was good horses behind him. Factor Cheval, Tahira, Check and Challenge, Rogue Millennium, Nashua. They were like proper horses. Paddington was even way back in the race. It was a deep QE2, and he just galloped him into the ground. But I do think he wants a definite ease in the ground, so the rain would have to come for him.
I agree. I think if the rain comes, he's massive. I think that's if the rain comes, he's probably the best, got the best piece of form on that type of ground in the race, and that would make him a big play. But as things stand with the uncertainty, I'd have a go on Factor Cheval, who wasn't that far behind some of the best horses over a mile last year. They all thought he needed plenty of cut in the ground, but he won on quicker ground at Meydan first time up. He just looks the overall a decent, solid bet in the race, similar to what Sharon might be, but I think Factor Cheval, he hasn't actually had that many goes on good ground. So if it did come up on good ground, the first time he really encountered proper decent ground was at the Meydan. So in good company. So I'd be taking a chance on him if forced to. But we're dealing with the uncertainties at the moment. Let's move on and talk about the King Charles Stakes, which is for the sprinters on the opening day. Obviously, new name for what was the King's Stand. Big Evs is the horse, Kieran. If I'll start with you on this race, that I think a lot of people would like to see for reasons of the fact that, obviously Mick Appleby's team and what they've done with him last season. Like, he looks like he trained on with that win at York. But how difficult will it be for him against those hardened older sprinters? I mean, he's pretty hardy himself, isn't he?
Yeah, he was obviously exceptional last year, and I have him as the one to beat for sure. There's I just have a soft spot for the filly of Believing of George Bowie's. I thought she was very impressive at Haydock the other day. I think I heard George Bowie saying publicly the other day that there's a chance they might be trying to go for the double. She's got an incredible attitude, and I think she is progressive, and she could be competitive at the top tier. But look, I think Big Ebs is definitely the one to be. Possibly Charlie Hill's horse as well, that won at the Curragh the other day,
Barney?
Mitbahi. Charlie does a fantastic job with these sprinters year in, year out, and he's obviously won this race plenty of times before with Batash, and knows what it takes to win one like this. But yeah, I think Mitbahi could put up a bold show, but Big Evs is a standout for me.
Yeah, Big Ev's terrific 2-year-old Ruby. Saw that he trained on. He also did it in a different style when he won first time up. I know it was his comeback run, but he was held up a little bit off the pace or just off the pace and then picked up nicely. But he's shown a bit of versatility in how he's run in his career already.
Yeah, he has. And that was obviously at York. I mean, he broke quite sharply at York and then wasn't taken off his feet, but he was allowed to, Tom just allowed him to relax. Then the other horses went by him and he came home really quickly. Obviously, he was a winner at the Royal Meeting last year when he won the Windsor Castle. He beat Johan Brahms. That's pretty solid form. But look, he is solid. I just think at 11-4 in a race as deep as this, I just think anti-post it's quite tight. And when I was looking down through them, I happened to be in Punchestown on Sunday, and Adrian Murray trained the winner of a pretty ordinary handicap hurdle, and he was in the winner's room after. And I strolled in for a cup of tea, and we started talking about his Ascot string, and he kept talking about Valiant Force. And I was thinking, yeah, he won last year at Ascot as well. He won the Norfolk. And I was thinking he was in America. He said they weren't happy with America, happy with America, so he was sent back to Europe. And I was asking about Bucanero Fuerte and other horses, 2-year-olds and whatever, and he kept going back to Valiant Force. So I took note, and he's 16-1. So I'm going to stick up Valiant Force, who doesn't have a whole pile to find with Big Evs. There wasn't much between them and Santa Anita in the juvenile sprint. So yeah, I'm going to stick up Valiant Force at 16-1 rather than Big Evs at 11-4.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, he wasn't that far. He was only beaten half a length by Big Evs in the juvenile sprint at Santa Anita. So valiant force. I like a horse who's run pretty well in the race in the last couple of seasons. Now, ideally, the ground will remain quick for him. But Twilight Calls, he was second to Nature Strip in the race 2 years ago. He was fourth in the race last year. He was off the course for a fair bit of time, but then he came back and ran really well at Newmarket, where he was actually quite detached early on, but picked up really strongly at the end and then got tired. I think the race will bring him on, and I think he's around the 16-1 mark as well. So I think that the signs are that although we respect Big Evs, there's enough opposition to him as well. Certainly a few plays at bigger prices. Okay, so those are two of the big races on the opening day. The third big race on the opening day, for me, might just be the best race of the meeting. It's the St James's Palace Stakes. And the reason why I say that is because the unbeaten Notable Speech is the favourite. He's reopposed by Rosalian. Harton might go for the jersey, but at the moment, it looks like it might be a cracking race. Metropolitan looks like he's going to be supplemented. Ruby, is this one that gets you excited?
Of course it does. I mean, obviously, Noble Speech was spectacular in Newmarket and the Guineas. Rosalian came to the Curragh and did really well off a slow gallop to run down Hatton. And then you have Henry Longfellow, who went to Longchamp behind Metropolitan and disappointed. But he disappointed around about the same time a certain City of Troy disappointed. And when you looked at Henry Longfellow's 2-year-old form last year, he was rock solid and he wasn't obviously held in the same regard by many people as City of Troy, but he showed up in races where City of Troy was an on-runner and managed to get the job done and do it impressively. So I actually think the two in here that would go for the jersey are River of Tiber and Hatem. And I would expect River Tiber to turn the form with Hatem in the jersey from the Irish 2000 Guineas. But when you get back to this race, I don't know, Kieran, to me, Noble Speech was spectacular at Newmarket. And geez, if you're offering me the chance to say, here, go and sit on one of them at Ascot, he's the one I'd want to be riding.
Yeah.
I
Well,
would. I
just
can't.
before we
I
hear from
still
you, Kieran,
struggle.
I just wanted to
Sorry.
remind everybody if they've got a view on this race, then please use the Q&A option on this preview. Send us your questions. Send us who you think might come out on top in this race before we hear from Kieran about the brilliance of Notable Speech in the Guineas at Newmarket.
Yeah, I really struggle to see Rosalian turning the form around with Notable Speech. I mean, watching them in the Guineas, my eye was slightly drawn to Sean Levy and Rosalian because I'm very close friends with Sean and I couldn't help but watch him. I was kind of hoping he'd win, but a 2 out when I saw Sean sort of traveling so well and thought he was home and hosed, and then all of a sudden saw Notable Speech coming down the wing and looking like he had just jumped in at the 2 furlong marker. I can't see. I heard Richard Hannon saying how Rosalian I think will be better around a bend, but you can't help but being super impressed with Notable Speech, and I struggle to see any sort of you know redemption from the Rosalian camp, really.
I'll just put it to both of you who know far more about race riding and tactics, but would it be possible that the Guineas, which was run at such a fearsome pace, particularly through the middle of the race, just dragged it out of Rosalian first time up? He was obviously fresh; he hadn't had a run, and also he's a very speedy horse. And he then, I thought, the run he produced in the Irish 2000 Guineas, when you look at the ground he has made up as Harton is quickening away from the other horses, I thought it was a massive effort. Showed a different side to him. And it's possible that a more conventionally run mile race around a Bennett Ascot might be more suitable to Rosalian than the race at Newmarket. I'm not saying it's not going to suit Notable Speech as well, because I respect an unbeaten horse like that. But I'm just thinking the scenario of the St James's Palace at Ascot might suit Rosalian better than the scenario in the Guineas. Am I reaching?
Touching.
Ruby,
I'm not
yours?
convinced. Yeah, I'm not convinced by that.
I think it's entirely possible, but I think you're not giving Notable Speech the credit that he too could have improved since the Guineas. I mean, there's
Yeah.
only the fourth start of his life. He was obviously a late starter. He didn't appear until this year. All his runs were on the all weather. That was his first. I don't remember much galloping he's done on grass, but that was his first race on grass. Newmarket down the hill into the dip. I only ever rode 2 year olds there in breeze ups, but it is quite down and back up. And who's to say he won't be a better horse on a more conventional track like Ascot? I thought he did in the Guineas was remarkable, and I think he could be even better in the James's Palace.
Well, what a prospect that is. I mean, it is fair to say that that 2,000 guineas might. Well, it's worked out to be brilliant so far. There's a Derby winner in it, a Sandy Lane winner, and one of the leading fancies for the Commonwealth Cup in Inisherin, the 1-2 in the in the Irish Guineas. It's possible we might have seen an all-time classic there in that particular classic. So 2 votes for notable speech, and I'm sticking with Rosalian. Henry Longfellow, though, Ruby, just mention him one more time because he didn't get much of a run. Even I know that what you're saying about City of Troy. Also, the form wasn't great at the time, and the Brian 3 also certainly perked up since then. But he didn't actually have much of a race, considering how it panned out in the French 2000.
No, no, he didn't. But that's Longchamp, isn't it? I mean, you watch so many races there, and so many horses do get caught in the wrong places. And look, he was mid-division, 3.5 down when he wanted to be getting closer. He was getting shuffled back, but that's racing, and that's going to happen. You'll see a lot of it in Ascot too. Up onto the bend, gets crowded. Someone doesn't get a run. Someone's going around the outside, and they're home for all money. So, look, that's just the joys of it. And I think it adds to racing. Actually, I think it adds to the race ride. And I'm sure Kieran loves the cutaways that open races up and create gaps for people. But when they're not there, and you have to think your way out of it and be 3 furlongs ahead of yourself, I think it brings about brilliant race riding. I think it's great to watch. And look, it happens at Longchamp. It's going to happen at Ascot. But I think that's part of the sport.
I think you're right. Kieran, I know that there might be one or two other horses on the opening day that we could perhaps reference at a later stage. So keep that up your sleeve. Let's move on and talk about the big races on the Wednesday. And the Duke of Cambridge will be first up. I don't need to tell you that I'll be cheering on Rogue Millennium to repeat her win in the race from 12 months ago. But Laurel is a possible contender in that race, Kieran?
Sure. Look, she's obviously had a long time off. There's no doubt that she'll slightly need the run. I think that they were hoping to possibly get a bit of a prep race into her at Epsom, but for some reason it didn't happen. So she's had a long time off. She was, she ran a massive race to finish second in the Sun Chariot, and she's very, very lightly raced, and she's a lovely moving filly. And I've ridden her a little bit recently actually, and she feels great. But I think if the Laurel we saw, you know, 2 years ago, I guess, turns up with improvements, yeah, she's going to take all the beat. I think she's a very good filly, yes, for sure.
Yeah, she looked terrific, certainly at the back end of 2022. And then she won first time up, and then things didn't work out from the lockage, and we haven't seen her since then. Ruby, how do you see the Duke of Cambridge?
I was slightly disappointed with your Rogue Millennium at the Curragh, Rishi, to tell you the truth. I think you sold her well, got yourself a small fortune there to buy the house in London. Fair play to you.
I'm in the
But
smallest room in the house, by the way. So
that's just the annex off the side of the house that Rogue Millennium
Yeah.
has built for him. But she's a decent, very good filly, Rogue Millennium. But I actually think the filly that beat her at the Curragh, Ocean Jewel, is overpriced here. She stepped up to a mile. She ran over a mile in the matron last year at Leopardstown, but her comeback run this year was at the Curragh when she beat Goldana and Rogue Millennium in the Landwade Stud Stakes. That was a Group 2 over a mile. I thought she travelled really well for Billy Lee. Thought she quickened impressively. And I think she'll get the trip. And I just think at around about 10-1, she's a great each way shout here.
yeah, she was doing a lot of sprinting last year, 6 and 7 furlongs, and
Yeah.
stepping up to Marb. There might be some more improvement. Heart's probably ruling my head a little bit, but I do think Rogue Millennium on that straight mile track on decent ground, which was the reason that she dropped back in trip last year, having run in the Middleton at York. She then dropped back down to a mile, which is for her first run over a mile when she won the race last year. So hopefully the run would have brought her on as well. By all accounts, according to Joseph O'Brien, she had strengthened up and got a bit bigger, so it might have been that she needed it as well. So that's our thoughts on the Duke of Cambridge on day 2 at Royal Ascot. The big Group 1 on day 2, of course, is the Prince of Wales Stakes. Auguste Rodin is hoping to get back to winning ways. But Ruby, he came up against White Birch last time out, and I thought White Birch beat him fair and square and convincingly.
Absolutely, and I would agree with you. And I think the Murphys have done an incredible job with White Birch. He's had the 3 starts this year, and he's been foot perfect on all 3 of them. Started on heavy ground when he won it. The Curragh backed it up again over 10 furlongs in the Curragh when he beat Lord Massousis on soft, and then won his Group 1 when he beat Augusta Rodin. But he just looked such a different horse to the horse we watched last year. He was awkward at the start. He was a messer in the parade ring. He looked difficult to get to the start. They've done an incredible job with him from 3 to 4 to look. They'd look to me like they've completely changed his mentality and his mindset. And he looked really, really good at the Curragh. Even in the parade ring, to watch him walking around, he just looks so much more mature and relaxed. And I don't know. To me, his head looked like he was already at stud, even if he was never going to be a stallion. And I think to change a colt's mentality back to being a racehorse takes a hell of a lot of doing. And they seem to have managed it with White Birch. And I thought he was a fair winner at the Curragh. I thought he travelled convincingly behind Augusta Rodin. He quickened up. They both quickened up and pulled well clear of the remainder. But White Birch was just too good for him. Now, if it doesn't rain and you get good to firm ground at Ascot, I'd probably be siding with Augusta Rodin. But if it does rain and there's any bit of give, I'd be with White Birch.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of White Birch, and just as you were pointing out, Ruby, I like the way he just tracked Auguste Rodin last time and dismissed him. And I don't think there were any excuses for that, Kieran. How did you read that race? And of course, you've got to factor in that there's the possibility that Inspiral might be up against them.
Yeah, I pretty much echo what Ruby said then. I think White Birch won fair and square, and he just looks the most uncomplicated sort of jockey dream ride. Um, he's certainly a progressive horse, and I can't make any excuses for Auguste Rodin. So I'd be, take Inspiral aside, I'd be siding with White Birch for sure.
Yeah, I think if you look at the time of the race as well, in Ireland last time, it was they dipped a second almost under standard. White Birch travelled with ease, so he's had 5 runs, I think, over 10 furlongs, and has won 4 of them, been placed in the other. Clearly, he's a very fast, or underrated for how quick he is. But also, he's by Ulysses, and everyone pointing out how well he trained on, and obviously Passenger was supposed to run in the race. There's lots of positives for White Birch in the Prince of Wales Stakes. So those are the 2 big races on day 2. Obviously, there are other races that will take place on all these days, handicaps, 2 races that will come to at the end, as well as answer your questions. And we've already had a few questions coming in on the Q&A. If you keep on sending them, we'll try and get through as many of them at the end of the preview, if possible. Moving on to Thursday and the Ribblesdale. I think I'm just going to hand over to you, Kieran, to talk about the Ribblesdale for a little bit, because the John and Thady Gosden team have a fair few options in this race. Who are they? What's the thinking? Who might you be on?
Yeah, so it looks like the John and Thady could potentially have 3 runners here. Danielle being one of them, that was third in the Lingfield Oaks trial. The winner of that trial obviously finished fourth in the Oaks, albeit beaten sort of 8.5 lengths. But I think she is a little bit ground dependent. If it was any way sort of good firm, I'd imagine she wouldn't even take a chance. But she's a daughter of Cracksman, and she appreciates a bit of giving the ground for sure. Another filly is Queen's Court that won a novice at Lingfield sort of 10 days, 2 weeks ago. She's gonna have a good bit to find, but she's got a beautiful pedigree, and her pedigree suggests she's going to improve with each run and with age. The other filly would be Ciola. She won her maiden first time out at Sandown. The form of that race has obviously worked out very well. The third horse came out and won the Musadora. And the second horse, well, actually, that's a bit of a touchy subject, because I rode the second horse Beely on Sunday at Goodwood, and she flipped over with me in the paddock and got withdrawn. So she hasn't been my best friend, but I think she's a very talented filly, Ciola. She ran in the listed race at Newbury, and she finished third. And I think that was probably like an extremely hot race. It was won by the Godolphin filly of Charlie Appy's. That's 2 from 2, and You know what, Ciola, so when she went there, she fell away quite a lot. She lost quite a lot of condition. And I mean, I know that was only 3 weeks ago, but Jonathan decided to give her, I know not a long time off, but some really easy work. And she wasn't herself at all going into that race at Newbury. And she's done really well for sort of having a really steady, easy 10 days. Her homework's been very good. Like her last two pieces of work have been very good, and she's taken a positive step forward. So I think there's a big engine there. Um, she's she's no doubt going to be a nice 4-year-old. She's got a lovely pedigree. She's out of timepiece. But yeah, at the moment I think I'd be siding with her.
Okay, Ciola, interesting thoughts on that. As you say, the form of that race quite good. Ejabia, who was behind, just ahead of her, is also due to line up in this race. Ruby, how do you see the Ribblesdale?
I'm afraid, Rishi, I spent 20 minutes looking at the Ribbles there, and I was none the wiser. Obviously, Dan's sequence stands out from a run in the Oaks, but I don't even know if she's going to run. So I didn't
She
have a
might be
strong
going to
opinion.
Gregory DM,
No,
I understand.
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't have a strong opinion.
Okay. The one again similar. I didn't have a strong thought on who would win, but I expect if rubies are red, if she runs in the race, I expect better from her than we saw at Epsom and indeed at Lingfield. I just don't think those two tracks suited her. At Epsom, she was too keen. She then started. She got caught in a pocket down the inside on the rail, and I'd just like to see her run on a conventional course over this sort of trip. I think she's better than we've seen certainly last time out. So that's a thought on the Ribblesdale. The Gold Cup, though, perhaps there's a more obvious horse in this race. Ruby Kyprios trying to regain his crown. Um, were you encouraged to run last time at 12 to 1 on?
Yeah, yeah, he blew me away. He's still going to be very hard to beat, though. Obviously, only had the two starts last year when he was second in the Irish Saint Leger to Eldar Eldarov, and then got beats in the neck on Champions Day at Ascot. But his two runs this year, he's beaten Queenstown on both occasions. And Queenstown, I think you should put into your diary for the Queen Alexander. That'll close out the meeting on the Saturday of Ascot. I think Queenstown will win that, but I do think Kyprios sets the standard. Gregory was obviously a winner at the meeting last year, and has he quite gotten up to this level? I don't think so. Obviously, was beaten by Giavaletto at York on his comeback run. He was well beaten in the Ledger last year. You have Vauban, who was second to Giavaletto at York, blew out in the Melbourne Cup. Key Chorister is a fair horse as well, but I just don't think any of these horses are quite up to the level that Kyprios is at. And like I'd say at shades of odds on, he slightly looks unopposable to me.
Okay, keeping it simple with Kyprios. Kieran, there are, I think, three possibles from the Golston team. Do you have a strong view on any of those? Is Kyprios the one still to beat, though?
Yeah, I think he still has to prove that he's sort of back to his best, but actually maybe he doesn't have to be. It looks like Gregory's definitely going to run Chorleyman and Sweet William, all of which I won't be riding. Robert Haviland will ride Sweet William. Chorleyman, I think, will be partnered by William Buick, and then James Doyle Gregory. I think Gregory is definitely going to improve for the step up and trip. Like he's not a slow horse, but um, he looks $1 million, this horse, and I think he could improve for that first outing this year. Um, Chorleyman, I suppose he has to prove that he's going to stay. He's a doubtful stayer over this trip, probably the same as Keys Chorister. I'm not convinced he's going to stay, but yeah, look, Kyprios is going to, he sets the standard for sure.
Yeah, he certainly does. And if he is back to his best, it's way too good for them. If he's nearly back to his best, it's still probably too good for them. But I echo your point. I'm encouraged to hear what you say about Gregory physically because he looked like he needed his run when I saw him up at York. But hopefully he'll step forward. Whether he's got the form is another thing. Friday's big racing sets off with the Commonwealth Cup. And I touched on a horse who I really like for it, and that's Inisherin. Kieran, I was really impressed with what he did after the Guineas to then run the way he did at Haydock, the way he towed them along and then had them all in trouble, sort of 2 furlongs out. How do you see it?
Yeah, he's obviously a very talented horse. He's not necessarily bred to be a 6 furlong type, but he clearly didn't stay in the Guineas. And I do just, I could see Van Dijk just bouncing back now. Obviously, he was a mightily impressive juvenile, and I just think around the time of Haydock, the Crisfords team, they weren't firing at all. So if they do just come back into form in time for Ascot, I'd like to see him bounce back now. He's an exceptionally talented horse, and I'd hate to see him not train on, as you'd say, but I wouldn't be giving up on him just yet.
Yeah, I mean, Ruby, this I think is a cracking race. You've got Inisherin, who was good last time. Van Dijk, who Kieran talks about, champion 2-year-old with that run on the belt, short, hopefully bouncing back. Elise Taters was impressive. Bucanero Fuerte was impressive. River Tiber was a top 2-year-old. You've talked about him. Jasur was impressive. There are a host of horses here that you can make a case for.
Yeah, and even Gimme the Beat Boys, who was fourth in the Coventry to River Tiber, second to Bucanero Fuerte at Nace. You have Porto Fortuna in there as well, second to Al Malka in the 1,000 guineas. Touched off in Santa Anita. She was second in the. No, she won the Queen Mary last year, didn't she?
Yeah,
Donica's filly. She did.
She did,
Frankie
yeah.
Rora beat Matrika. So there's some really good 3-year-olds in here. Different people go on about different races, adding and taking away from meetings. I think this race definitely adds to Royal Ascot. I think it's a cracking renewal of it. And I'd slightly be with Kieran. I would be willing to forgive Van Dijk for his Haydock run. And Jesus, he was unbelievable last year as a 2-year-old. So, and even he's winning Deauville. I mean, Ramatula should be the 1,000 guineas winner.
yeah. Which leads us on nicely to our next race, which is Coronation Stakes that we'll talk about, which takes place on the Friday. Now, just to confirm, I like Inisherin and 2 votes for Van Dijk, but a couple of others that Ruby mentioned there as well. The Coronation Stakes. So, Opera Singer, I think this is the only runner that Aidan O'Brien has in the Coronation Stakes, or the only intended runner anyway. Fallen Angel, winner of the 1,000 guineas in Ireland. El Malka, the winner of the 1,000 guineas at Newmarket. Ruby's spoken about Ramatuelle. I think Porta Fortuna might be going to the Commonwealth Cup, but she obviously was involved in that cracking finish to the Guineas. Who was the best filly in the Guineas at Newmarket?
Ramatula was the best filly in the 1,000 guineas. It just didn't work out for her on the day. What was the best filly in the Irish guineas? It was probably Opera Singer, only she wasn't fit enough to win it.
Were you there that day, Ruby?
Yes,
Did she look like?
she did.
Yeah, yeah.
She looked round. Not the biggest filly in the world, but she looked round for one of Aidan O'Brien's at the Curragh. And I thought Danny Tudhope completely controlled the race on Fallen Angel. It was a 3 furlong race. He quickened from the 3, and he was never a 3 even, and he was never going to get caught. But I thought, watching the 1,000 guineas, that if they met again, I would definitely be with Opera Singer. She blew me away in Longchamp. I was there last October as well, and yeah, I'm with Opera Singer here, big time.
Big time. She was magnificent in the Marcel Boussac, Kieran. She blitzed them. And at the time, you were thinking, well, Aidan's going to win everything with City of Troy in the Colts division. He was going to win everything in the Phillies division with Opera Singer.
Yeah, she obviously had a setback. I'm not sure what it was, but Aidan made it pretty. Yeah, he was pretty vocal about the fact she was going to come on for the run, big time, I think. But yeah, Ramatuli, I think, was in the Guineas when the jockey initially kicked, she put sort of 2-3 lengths between the rest of the pack, and it was a long way home for her. I think Oisin Murphy might be riding her in the Coronation.
Okay.
But I think she's exceptionally talented, and I think she could win.
It's again really a terrific race because there's the potential to not only have we've spoken about 2 Guineas winners in there in Fallen Angel and Almalka, but we're talking about horses that they beat who might have better chances than them. There's also the French 1,000 Guineas winner in Rahia, and there's the possibility that I think a lot of people who back Romantic Style that day might think she might beat her with a more conventional run. It's a terrific race, but it could be that they're all up against something special if the opera singer who turned up in the Marcel Boussac is the opera singer that turns up in the Coronation Stakes. Another progeny from the side Justified on the comeback trail. So I think there's a.
I think it's almost the race of the week.
I think that those 2 races, St James's Palace and the Coronation,
Yeah.
3-year-olds, standout races for me. And to be a Commonwealth Cup, I think it's terrific.
Yeah, I agree with
Mm.
you. I think they're three cracking races. Yeah, big time.
Yeah. Royal Ascot's going to live up to, fingers crossed, live up
Well,
to,
it is.
the
It's the
hype.
it's the it's the 3-year-olds that are holding it up because it's the lack of international older horses that are
Yeah.
kind of making you question
Yeah.
the other races. But it's the strength and depth of the 3-year-olds that are making it so interesting.
And long may that last. It's great when the 3-year-olds do hold their own. One other race on the Friday that we can reference, and that's the King Edward the Seven Stakes. Now, this is a hard one, I think, to decipher because there's the possibility of a couple of horses that ran ad Epsom lining up from the Derby in this race, but obviously the likes of Ambiente Friendly going to the Curragh for the Irish Derby, Los Angeles, something similar. But Dear a Mile, Kieran, is potentially lining up for the race. Aidan O'Brien suggested that Chief Little Rock will be one of 3 runners in the race for him. I think Illinois is also due to line up for him. But how do you play this one?
Yeah, I think I went on a horse at Yarmouth 2 weeks ago, a horse called Stereotypes. He won a novice with a penalty, and I think he's going to be supplemented for this race. He's a horse by Galileo. He's a big, sort of laid back type, but I think he's got a big engine. So I think, yeah, the plan is to supplement him. So I'm very much looking forward to this race. I worked him the other morning. He seemed to be in great order. He's come on plenty for his 2 outings. Very laid back horse, would come on plenty for each run. So this could be an interesting race.
Wow, that's interesting because I remember when he won first time up, was it at Nottingham? Um, he was the unfancied of the two.
Jack Mitchell was on it, yeah.
Yeah, and he produced some turn of foot first up, and then I saw you ride him to win it. He looks untapped potential, even though he's 2 from 2. So the fact that he's been unleashed in the King Edward's quite indicative of the opinion he's been held in.
Yeah, I think a few people highlighted on Racing TV and the likes of his speed figures when he won that novice or that maiden at Nottingham, and they look pretty exceptional for a very green horse. And he won convincingly under a penalty on possibly ground that wasn't in his favour. So he's the horse. He still carries plenty of condition, but he's improving with each run.
Excellent. Ruby, that wasn't you highlighting the time on Road to Royal Ascot, was that Racing
No,
TV?
Fred, not no, it wasn't me.
You missed that one. I
I missed
think it
that
was
one. Yeah,
Angus.
yeah. So to
What
say
do
that.
you what do you like here, Ruby?
Illinois is disappointing me. I was in Leopardstown when he ran in April, and he looked like a small rhinoceros, and I thought he would come on more than enough to win the Derby trial at Linkfield, where he ran into Ambiente Friendly, which probably now isn't a bad run, but I prefer to see him going a mile and 6. Not sure a mile and a half is far enough for him. But I did like what Chief Little Rock did in the Gallinule at the Curragh on his last start. Again, he was in the right place all the way. Wayne Norden booked him out to make the run, and a lot of the winners on Guinea's weekend at the Curragh over the 3 days were on the pace all the way. He was in the right place all the way, but he was never not going to win the Gallinule. And I think Aidan will win it. Whichever one Ryan rides would probably be where I'd be siding, but I just think Illinois wants further. Is there a mile and 6 3-year-old race in Ascot? I thought there was.
Well, the
What did Gregory win
Queen's
last year?
sorry,
By the
What did,
bars, yeah.
Queen's Vase is now that distance. Yeah,
yeah, I prefer if Illinois ran into Queen's Vase. So I can go with Chief Little Rock here.
yeah.
What
Chief
about
Little.
Gen?
Sorry, Kieran.
What about gender? I thought he's done very little wrong. He's the only one that actually chased down Hidden Law uh, in the at Chester. I thought he's done very little wrong.
Yeah, has a chance as well.
Yeah,
Again, it's competitive, isn't it?
yeah. He's hugely unexpected. I think Ruby's point about which one Ryan rides will probably be indicative of maybe who to support from the O'Brien team. But I'm massively interested now. I had no idea about Theory of Tides being supplemented for the race, so that's encouraging. I like the horse a lot, so I'm hoping for a big run for him and a big run for you in the King Edward on the Friday. Let's move on and talk about Saturday's big racing at Ascot, and it's the older horses in the Hardwick over a mile and a half. Now, I think you were saying to me, no Emily Upjohn. Is that right, Kieran?
Yeah, I don't think she's not going to go. I think she might be she might be aimed for the Pretty Polly.
Okay.
So
And that
she's going to miss that, yeah.
Okay. Um, there's a horse running in here that I'm a big fan of, and I'll just stick with you, Kieran, because it's from the Gosden team. I don't know if you've sat on him at home or anything, but Middle Earth, he looks like he's going to line up in the Hardwick. I thought he was brilliant at the back end when he won at York last season. Then he disappointed a little bit in the Ledger on ground. I don't think it was suited, but I loved his comeback run. Brave, getting up the inside of King of Conquest, who of course won subsequently at Newbury.
Yeah, I think it was very impressive at Newbury, and I think you could probably upgrade that run for a horse that was stepping back in trip. They went no gallop that day, and he's sitting last, and he's managed to quicken up off no pace and get his head in front. He's a progressive horse, and yeah, I think he could take all the beating for this.
Yeah, he could have some year. I think he might end up in the Melbourne Cup. Ruby,
Sure.
what about the Hardwick for you?
Yeah, I was with him as well. Thought he did well in the Melrose last year. He beat Denmark and Fox Journey. Thought he quickened well from off the pace under Roisin. Then went to the Ledgers, as you said, didn't perform behind continuous, but uh, I kind of underrated him. I was going saying, well, he only ran the same race in the Ledger as he ran in the Melrose. He finished just in front of Denmark, but obviously Chess Piece was just in front of him in Gregory. But I was wrong. He turned that round with Chess Piece at Ascot at the end of last year, and then was a good winner at Newbury in May. So yeah, I was with Middle Earth as well as the two of you guys.
Yeah, well, we've weighed him down, but 3 votes from Middle Earth. He's got some turn of foot on him, and I hope that he can produce that to win the Hardwick. The Group 1 race on Saturday of Royal Ascot is now called the Queen Elizabeth II Jubilee Stakes. Tough race, this. Kid Ross is a horse that I liked, if I'm entirely honest, but that's based on the fact that we are going to probably get some rain, and I think that will suit him. Who will ride? I'm not sure because it's certainly not going to be Frankie Dettori after everything we've heard. How do you see the Queen Elizabeth II Jubilee Stakes, Ruby? Who would you side with at this stage?
I would be siding with one Kieran gave a mention for the King Charles III, mid by. I hope he runs here. I think he's a better horse over 6 than he is over 5. Thought he quickened really well inside the last half of furlong of the Curragh to beat regional. And I think Jamie Spencer coming from off the pace on the straight track and Ascot over 6 furlongs on mid by probably give you a heart attack somewhere along the way. But yeah, I think he's the winner for me.
All right, Mitt Barney for Charlie Hills and Jamie Spencer. What about you, Kieran?
Yeah, look, Kinross obviously loves the track. I suppose it depends what the ground's going to do, but are we mad to think that maybe the Wizard of I might have a little squeak here?
Is he definitely running in this and not the Wokingham?
No, I think he's running in this. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
I don't know. I don't have a strong view on this race, if I'm honest. Ugh. I ride out for Charlie Fellows on a regular basis, and he is boring me about this horse. So,
I mean, he did very well
Why,
to win
why
first
haven't you
half.
been boring him as to why he's been running them over 7 furlongs in the mile if he thinks he's a Group 1 6 furlong sprinter?
well, Stan Moore trained him.
Stan Moore trained him originally, right?
And the
Yeah,
fact is, he used to travel quite nicely in decent races with Stan Moore, looking like he might win. And then obviously he was always a sprinter in disguise. But I wasn't sure what race he was going. I thought Charlie was going to go down the Wokingham
yeah,
route.
I think he's going for the big one. Yeah,
Tempted. He's tempted for the big. Why not?
yeah.
Why not? He's a 5-year-old, so might as well crack on. Okay. He could. Yeah. Why not? 16-1 in places. Kinross, I like. Millstream did well to win at York, having encountered a bit of traffic and got up and possibly still improving for Jane Chapel-Hyam, who's got a very good record at Royal Ascot, by the way. She's quite picky about horses that she runs there, and she's got a good record over the years. Okay, so we've covered the big races. We have got the Q&A still to come. Questions, we thank you very much for sending those in. But what I'd like to ask you both now is just to concentrate on the handicaps for a brief period. And is there anything handicap-wise? I mean, there's the Royal Handicap and the Wokingham, some of the big ones that you may have had something that's attracted you to one of those. Who would like to set me off first, Ruby or Kieran?
I'll go for you. Give you more time to think there, Kieran. Curdor caught the eye at the Curragh on Guinea's weekend over 6 furlongs. I believe he runs in the Hunt Cup. He's already 10-1 favourite. You definitely should not be betting in that race anti-post, because that will be at least 6 places on the day with the bookmakers each way, and there's nothing going to be any shorter than 10-1 anyway. So there's no way you should be backing any of those at him anti-post. What is there an older fillies handicap, guys, over a mile or a mile and a quarter?
The older fillies, the Sandringham
Yeah,
Uh,
mile. Yeah.
fillies over a mile.
Gregorina of Joseph O'Brien's. She's entered in the Ribblesdale, but I think of her, I think she's £8 or £10 well in. Gregorina, when you go back through some of her form. So I was impressed with her at the Curragh on her first start for Joseph. I thought she would win. Sandringham, was that what it was?
Sandringham, yeah.
Sandringham, yeah, I'll go for her in the Sandringham. I think a horse called My Leica of Willie Mullins's has a chance in the Ascot Stakes, and Ethical Diamond in the Duke of Edinburgh is the mile and a half on Friday.
Is that the 3-year-old race of the older? Which
They're
one? Sorry.
all older horses.
Oh, the Duke of Edinburgh, yeah.
Duke of Edinburgh on the Friday would be my ones for handicaps.
Okay. Thank you for those, particularly Gregorina, who's, yeah, I wasn't sure what race she would potentially run in, but she does go for the Sandringham. That's interesting. Curdor in the Hunt Cup. Kieran, have you had enough time to think for handicaps?
I'm not that well supported myself in the handicaps, but I really like a horse called English Oak for the Wokingham. I thought he was very impressive at Haydock, and look, he's going to try and defy a £9 rise, but I think maybe I'm a bit bold, but I think he could, that old cliche, be a group horse in a handicap hiding away. I
He
think
did look quite for the July Cup after he won that race, didn't he?
yeah, yeah, but I think he's going for the Wokingham.
Yeah. And he's got one less horse to worry about in the Wizard of Eye, who might be going for
Yeah,
the Okay, so English Oak, yes, from Ed Walker's stable. Same colours as Starman, who of course
yeah,
was a top class sprinter back in the day, won the July Cup. Okay, some good pointers there. I'll mention two. One in the Hunt Cup, Holloway Boy, who's got a very good record at Ascot, won the Chesham, ran well in the Jersey, and he's had a couple of runs this season, albeit in a Patton company. I think that he's such a big horse as well that carrying a bit more weight in handicap is not going to be a problem to him. So I think he's going to run well. And although I do respect English Oak, because I thought what English Oak did on his second run this season looked fantastic, and he could be potentially very, very good. But there's a horse who ran really well at Newmarket in a very good sprint, significantly for Julie Camacho. He's only got one entry coming up, and that is in the Wokingham. The big field, strong pace should be right up his street, and he's obviously very adaptable over the 5 or 6 furlongs. So I was going to give him a shot. So those are two more to add to the list for handicaps. 2-year-olds wise, is there anything that you've either sat on that's heading to Royal Ascot, something that's impressed you so far this season, Ruby? I'll start with you, Kieran. Might you have
I definitely didn't sit on any of them anyway.
precepts? Kieran, what have you got?
The John Thady team are a little bit light on 2-year-olds. We possibly might have one runner in the Coventry. A Blue Point Colt by Ingle. He got beat on debut. He finished second at Kempton, but he's come on plenty. You know, he's stoutly bred. He's owned by Cheaply Park, so I think he's likely going to go to the Coventry. Another horse I like called Electrolyte of Watson Racing. Archie Watson. Was it Archie Watson's Electrolyte?
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah,
Yeah,
who
One Air.
Yeah,
Yeah, One Air. I thought he was very good. Archie Watson knows what it takes to win this race, and you know, I've been quite impressed by the stallion as well. Hello Youmsen and Richard Brown, who's the manager to Watson, seems to be backing him a lot too. So I think he has a good chance now in the Coventry.
Okay. Watman have a strong team of horses going to the meeting. Ruby, have there been any 2-year-olds that have caught your eye? I mean, there are a couple in Ireland that have looked magnificent, including one for Diego Diaz.
Yeah, there have been. There have been a couple of smartish ones, but the two that caught my eye were Camille Pizarro, heading for the Coventry, and Aidan's other one, Whistle Jacket in the Norfolk. They'd be the two for me.
Okay.
I think with the jacket, yeah.
I'll throw one that I'm not sure whether many people would have lined this one up, but there's a horse called East Hampton who ran behind one of Aidan's and Joseph's. Cadogan was the horse that finished second. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head the horse who won the race, Henri something or the other that won it. So narrow finish. East Hampton, trained by David Marnan, finished back and forth. Would have won the race with a clear run. I mean, got repeatedly checked. Someone pointed out the run to me, in all honesty, and I went back and looked at it. He's by Cracksman, so he qualifies for the Chesham. He'd be a huge price, but I think he might run all right. And the Chesham does throw up the odd strange result, as we have seen in the past. So keep that in mind. Make Haste, who I saw, and I mentioned to Ruby just a few moments ago, really impressive when she won first time up. She may take on Mountain Breeze in the Albany, which would be quite exciting because Mountain Breeze has looked very good for Charlie Appleby in 2 runs up against Make Haste, who quickened up so well to win on her debut. So those are our thoughts on the big races, some of the handicaps, and indeed some of the 2-year-old races. Before we close off with Kieran's best selection, Ruby's best selection, and mine for the meeting, we've got a few Q&A contributions. Lucy Claire Taylor has asked predictions for winning trainer and jockey, the leading trainer and jockey for Royal Ascot Week. You've got to take yourself out of this, Kieran. Or you can't. No. Are you going to win it?
Yes.
Who is going to be the leading jockey and trainer at Royal Ascot this year?
From the horses we've mentioned, oh no, I think James Doyle could have a big chance. Yeah, James Doyle, I think, yeah.
James
I've
Doyle
got
for
him.
what's that? Yeah. Okay. Ruby, have you got a jockey that you think might excel?
You put a number on it. What wins? You look at something like this. 5?
You have.
Uh, five, five, maybe, yeah. Yeah.
One a day. That's 5. So like if you draw a blank and you write a double, but like 5 to me, River Tiber 1, Queenstown 2, Kyprios 3, Opera Singer 4, a couple of 2-year-olds, maybe a handicap. Say Ryan's impossible to oppose, and therefore Aiden will win too.
It's a straightforward. I think it is straightforward. I think it is them. Actually, there's one of the horses I forgot to mention, which is London City, who won up at York. He's running in the King George V handicap for the 3-year-olds every mile and a half. Well, I think he's got a cracking chance. So yeah,
Yeah.
some good chances for Ryan Moore and Aidan O'Brien. Edward Charter mentions, I think Ruby, you kind of touched on one. He says, has Willie got anything lined up like he had Vauban last year? You did mention one of his horses, didn't you?
My Leica was beating novice
Hello.
hurdle at Killarney runs in the Ascot Stakes. Palacio won a maiden hurdle in Punchestown. He was trained by David Municia. He runs in that 1.6 at the Copper House. Is it? That what it's called?
Yeah, the Copper House handicap. Yeah.
Copper House, yeah, the 1.6. An Ethical Diamond who was touched off by Saturn. He won the county hurdle, but he was touched off by Saturn at Leopardstown. Saturn was unlucky on Guineas weekend in the Curragh, but won again at the Curragh since Saturn did. So Ethical Diamond in the 1.5 mile, which you told me was the Duke of Edinburgh, I think.
Duke of Edinburgh for the older
Yeah,
horses.
yeah.
King George V for the 3-year-olds, yes. Okay. A few more questions just to flip through a few of these. Here we go. Kieran, where does Kieran like to be drawn in the big 7 furlong straight mile handicaps at Ascot? Where the
Yeah.
pace is?
Yeah, where the paces and where the good horses are. But 7 furlong races, yeah, that's basically the simple answer is, well, you want to be surrounded or draw next to horses that are going to take you into the race. And you know, I don't necessarily agree with like track biases. I think it's basically it comes down to where the horses are drawn around you.
Okay. That was from Tony. We had a question from Ed asking about recommendations or must-see do things for any of Racing Breaks customers coming to the Royal Meeting. And by the way, there are still limited tickets available. Racingbreaks.com, www.racingbreaks.com. There may still be tickets, including for Ladies' Day on the Thursday. So if you haven't got a ticket yet, then click on that link, racingbreaks.com. Ruby, if you were recommending something for Royal Ascot, which day to go, or something to make sure you do when you're there?
I don't think there's a bad day. So whichever day you're going, I think Ascot, it is Alright, Tuesday you could argue has the strongest racing, but outside of that, it's the same every day from the parade to the atmosphere before the first race to the actual race and to the singing, the bandstand afterwards. It's pretty much the same every day. It's an incredibly enjoyable day out. I love going. I always go socially on the Tuesday and I'm working thereafter. But I would say make sure you're there for the day. See everything, look at everything, back a couple of winners, and then put a deposit on the trip to the Arc because that is another cracking day out.
Yes, the Arc, indeed, a cracking day out. And of course, you can be there with Racing Breaks as well. So if you get the opportunity and want to join the Racing Breaks fraternity at the Arc, then that is certainly an option for you. Go to the website and search for that. Ruby, I do have one question to ask you on a personal level. When you're singing at the bandstand, do you actually sing with the
No,
ITV? No, nor do I. I just stand there. My singing is so terrible.
Rish, you have to. There's an important, important thing. Excuse me. It's an important thing in life. You should always realize your capabilities. I cannot sing, so I do not sing.
Say, so I go there and they give you the microphone and they say sing and it's awful. I don't want to join in.
I pray. I pray we're gone off air before the band starts.
That's what I can't make it. Can you sing, Kieran? You
Absolutely not. No.
okay? Let's see. Take one more question, and it is: what is the horse Kieran is most excited about riding at Ascot, and indeed for the rest of the season? So, Kieran, I'm gonna leave that one with you. In Spiral, perhaps, and something for the rest of
Okay,
the season.
yeah, so yeah, the obvious one is in Spiral. But possibly less obvious would be a horse called Ibn Shaddad that runs in the Jersey. He's stepping back in trip. He ran in the Craven and he was second behind, like a distant second behind Hartem. But he had been really headstrong in his work leading up to that race, so we decided to put a red hood on him. Was it no, no, sorry, a hood on him, and he completely fell asleep with me, and I never really got a tune out of him. So they decided then to run him in the French Guineas, and the hood was off, but they got 22 mils of rain 20 minutes before the race. He's a horse by Calix. He loves top of the ground, so it was an absolute write-off. But actually, he ran well considering. So, I think I think the step down to 7 won't be an issue at all. So, this horse has got an engine, and I think we're yet to see the best of him.
Okay, Evan Shaddad,
That's a
one to look out for.
And
that's
sorry
a
for
dark
one for
that's a
the
dark
one.
one.
Yeah. One for the remainder of the season would be a horse called Lead Artist. He won a nice race at the York Festival. He's only had 2 runs and he just got touched off in the Wood Ditton, but he bounced back and won impressively, and I think he's very talented.
Yeah, lead artist in the Juddmonte colours, 2 runs, second first time up in the Wood Ditton and won pretty nicely at York on his next start. So one to look out for, Evan Shaddad. Now, a few people have messaged on the Q&A to ask for our best selections of the week. So, Ruby, I'll start with you. Who is your best selection at Royal Ascot this year?
Oh, I think Queenstown will win the Queen Alexander. He would be my best selection, but Jesus, waiting for 35 races to pass to wait for one is a long way. So outside of that, I think Opera Singer and the Coronation.
Okay, Opera Singer, the Coronation, but Queenstown in the Queen Alexandra, the last race and the longest race on Saturday. Kieran, one for Royal Ascot this year.
You go first.
Please, you go. You go ahead. Give me more time.
Um, okay, White Birch and the Prince of Wales if Inspiral goes to the Queen Anne.
White Birch, and obviously we're all cheering you on with Inspiral. And I'm going to go with Middle Earth in the Hardwick. I think he's a super horse, and I'm excited to see what he can do there. Maybe he might be good enough to run in something like the King George if he wins. So Middle Earth for me, White Birch for Kieran, Ruby going for Queenstown and the Queen Alexandra. But for those who can't wait till the last race on Saturday, Opera Singer in the Coronation Stakes as well on the Friday. Thank you very much to everyone who has joined in for this Racing Breaks Royal Ascot preview. Hope you've enjoyed it. Hope that we've found a few winners, even though we're bit way out. I'm sure we pointed you in roughly the right direction. Ruby, thank you very much for joining us.
Cheers, Rishi.
Look forward
See
to
you
seeing
next
you at
week.
Ascot.
Kieran, the best of luck to you. I hope it's a good week for you.
Thank you so much, Ruby. Thank you.
Indeed, we all endorse that. Most importantly, Kieran, we hope that you have a great Royal Ascot and hope that Inspiral does the business in whichever race she runs. And thank you very much for sparing the time to join us on this Racing Breaks Royal Ascot preview. But from Ruby, Kieran, myself, for now, bye bye.